Hi, I'm Eric Bowling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's dive right into our top story, the feud erupting between Donald Trump and President Obama. Critics say the president took a thinly veiled shot at Mr. Trump yesterday when he said this.
Even when hatred burns hottest, even when the tug of tribalism is at its most primal, we must resist the urge to turn inward. We must resist the urge to demonize those who are different.
President-elect Donald Trump responded with a tweet this morning saying, quote, "Doing my best to disregard the many inflammatory President O statements and roadblocks, thought it was going to be a smooth transition, not," unquote. The question now, is President Obama obstructing a smooth presidential transition? Joining us now from Washington with reaction, Matthew Miller, a former Justice Department spokesman in the Obama administration, and Brad Blakeman, a Republican strategist. Matt, I'm going to start with you. You know, the smooth transition of power in the presidential level is what distinguishes democracies from banana republics. It's very important, yet President Obama seems to be wanting to put a little bit of a roadblock in between the smooth transition.
Well, I would disagree with that. If you look at what the president said yesterday, it's in keeping with everything he said throughout his political career, that we are at our strongest as a nation when we work together, when we put aside our political differences, and when we don't demonize each other. And in fact, those are the type of remarks you've heard from presidents of both parties really throughout our history. I think the fact that Donald Trump saw those statements and felt that they were an attack on him, a plea that we don't demonize each other. He saw it as a personal attack.
Even when hatred burns hottest.
Yeah,
what was that a reference to?
Well, I think it was a reference to Americans. It was a plea from the president to every American to not demonize each other and to try to work together. And I think the fact that Trump sees that as an attack on him really says more about Trump and the kind of politics that he practices than it does about President Obama.
Brad, do you agree with Matt that this was not a thinly veiled shot? I mean, it doesn't even look that thinly veiled. And basically, over the last couple of weeks, we've heard President Obama take a few shots at President-elect Donald Trump, including, "I would have beat him if I ran again."
Sure. I mean, this is calculated at delegitimizing the fair and free election that Donald Trump won. Look, Barack Obama can't come to terms with the fact that a rebuke of Hillary was a rebuke of him. 8 years of failed policy. The president went on the road and pleaded with people to vote for Hillary because it would be a reflection on him, and he just can't accept it. But I'll tell you this, Donald Trump has been working every day for a smooth transition of power. Barack Obama has not. He has not done it. We've seen it with Israel. Instead of winding down policy, he's ginning up bad policy, trying to rule from the grave when Donald Trump takes office. It's unfair to the country. It's unfair to the new president.
Yeah, what about it, Matt? So President Obama has 23 days left in office, and he seems to be still continuing with policy initiatives.
Of course he is. He was elected to a term of 4 years, not 3 years and 11 months. And till January 20th, when he's no longer the president, it's his obligation to carry out policies that he sees fit. He's done that with respect to international relations, and he'll continue to do it for domestic policy.
That directly contradict what the policies of a president-elect Donald Trump will want to institute when he gets into office? Does it make sense to start with these policy initiatives now with 23 days left before he leaves?
Sure. If President-elect Trump wants to reverse some of these policies or take the country in a new direction when he's president, that is absolutely within his right. But until he becomes president, President Obama still has the obligation to carry out his duties as he sees fit. And it's natural that he would do it, and I expect him to continue to do it between now and January 20th.
And Brad, what is this about? Is this about Obama legacy?
Yeah, it is. It is about encumbering the incoming president. It's tying his hands, and it's embarrassing this president. Donald Trump is being given the ability to start his presidency without having to undo more of Obama's feckless policy. And also, we have to remind this. Obama's first priority right now in the transition period is a smooth transition of government. That should be taking up all his time, but it's not. And he's sending also a message to others who are supposed to be working on a smooth transition that let's not do what we should be doing for Donald Trump. Let him fend for himself when he takes office. Because if you believe what Matt says, that a smooth transition isn't necessary because Obama's policies trump that.
It is. It's the only thing that separates us from lesser democracies, as I said earlier. Matt, let me ask you this. I'm going to posit this. I think President Obama is diverting from what his legacy will be. Right now, as it is right now, he will have overseen the mortal destruction of the Democrat Party. So if he puts up all these initiatives, the UN resolution, the sanctions against Russia, maybe we'll forget that the Democrats have basically fallen apart over the last 8 years.
I don't think that's what he's overseeing. Obviously, we lost this election. It happens. We're going to go back and work and try to learn some lessons and come back stronger. I did want to address what Brad said about the transition. Even the Trump transition has said that at an operational level, the Obama administration has worked very hard to brief their successors on policy, to hand over things smoothly. That's happening. If there is one side that continues to cross the line, it in fact is the Trump transition, which is delving into foreign policy when he's actually not the president, and that responsibility still lies with President Obama.
All right, Brad. I think President Obama got his clock cleaned. I think the Democrats did, but so does Lindsey Graham. Listen to what he had to say on Putin, Russia, and Obama. Listen.
When it comes to Obama and Putin has cleaned his clock. In terms of Obama taking action, I don't think it'll do any good. The bottom line is you need to hit Russia in a sustained fashion. So if Obama tries to do something going out the door that's not sustained, then you send the wrong signal. If I were President Trump, I would call President Obama and say, don't start something that you can't finish. Let Trump and the new Congress do this.
And now, Brad, what we're talking about is President Obama this morning promised to administer sanctions. Well, actually, this morning he said there was going to be punishment to Russia. We waited all day, and this afternoon we hear there'll be some sort of stepped-up sanctions against Russia. Again, 23 days left before he leaves office, sanctioning Russia. Your thoughts?
This is crazy. It's another bogus line in the sand. And by the way, Putin's laughing up his sleeve. You have the lamest of duck presidents who he's had no relationship with, and as Lindsey Graham properly pointed out, cleaned his clock the last 8 years. You think anything that this guy does is going to have any effect on Russia? And by the way, it's up to the new Congress and the new president to deal with Russia effectively, starting a new relationship from strength, not weakness. And that's exactly the weak point that Obama is putting in Trump's lap.
Yeah, Matt, do you think President Putin is I don't know, you think he's nervous? He put his shirt on, get off the horse? He said, oh, I'm going to get some sanctions slapped on me by President Obama, who's 23 days left in office.
Well, let's see what the sanctions look like. Here's the problem that we face right now.
Yeah, but So what can they do? If they're toothless sanctions, it doesn't matter anyway. So what's this all about?
We don't know yet whether they're toothless or not. They might directly sanction Putin himself, who we know has stored billions of dollars in accounts outside of Russia.
Do you think, do you honestly stand here on the factor tonight at 8:07 or so and say that President Obama is going to sanction Vladimir Putin directly?
I don't think we know. I think we'll find out tomorrow. It might be him. It might be people close to him. But we do know that the sanctions in the past, Putin has reacted very strongly to them. But here's the problem. The reason President Obama has to do this is we cannot trust President Trump when he takes office to punish Russia. Remember what he did during the campaign. He encouraged
Vladimir Putin. The American people trusted him enough to elect him. That's the point.
That doesn't mean that everything he did was above board. He encouraged Vladimir Putin to hack into the Clinton campaign's emails. The Russian government did that and released those emails. You now have a president who's been elected with the help of a foreign government, a foreign dictator.
How does it help? Matt, how do you help? Can you put him on? This is a left talk. This is the left talking point. Tell us how he helped. He helped by hacking into the Clinton campaign's emails, by turning those emails over to WikiLeaks to discover truth. I'm glad to see that you support a foreign government hacking into the U.S. political process.
But Matt, you're not concerned with the truth. Let's say the Russians did uncover on Hillary Clinton that we would have never known but for their actions. I'm not suggesting they did the right thing. I'm not suggesting they did it at all.
I got to go hot debate. And again, Matthew, we're still waiting to see that evidence. Just waiting to see some evidence. Matthew, Brad, thank you very much. When we come right back, a huge economic announcement from Donald Trump today. Is he good for business? We'll debate it directly ahead.
Did you know 2 areas of your brain can make it hard to lose weight? Contrave is an FDA-approved weight loss medicine that may help adults who are overweight or struggle with obesity lose weight and keep it off. Contrave is believed to work on 2 areas of the brain, your hunger center.
I'm so hungry.
To reduce hunger, and your reward system.
Ice cream. French fries.
To help control cravings. Across 3 long-term studies, Contrave patients lost approximately 2 to 4 times more weight than with diet and exercise alone. Contrave is not for everyone. One ingredient in Contrave may increase suicidal thoughts or actions in some children, teens, and young adults.
Segment tonight, President-elect Donald Trump took a few questions from the press late today and made the following announcements about jobs.
So we just had some very good news because of what's happening and the spirit and the hope. I was just called by the head people at Sprint, and they're going to be bringing 5,000 jobs back to the United States. They're taking them from other countries. They're bringing them back to the United States.
And another company called OneWeb is also planning to hire 3,000 people. The president-elect also mentioned that he spoke with President Obama today in what he described as a, quote, nice conversation. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the two leaders seem to be in a bit of a feud, so while we're not privy to that conversation, at least we know they're on speaking terms. Joining us now from St. Louis with reaction, Ed Martin, a Republican strategist and author of The Conservative Case for Trump. And here in New York, Adam Green, a Democratic strategist. Hang in there, Ed, for 1 second. I want to get my Democrat here. Adam, okay. Adam, I'm a carrier. Ford, IBM, Sprint, OneWeb, Japanese investments, jobs, America. It's all good, right?
America's great. I want to make a little news right here on the factor, if that's okay. The organization that I run, the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, will be creating some jobs in 2017. You can go to our website, boldprogressives.org, click on the link and apply. But announcement number 2, it had nothing to do with Donald Trump. We are doing it for our own purposes. We need some people to work for us.
Okay,
and the same thing applies for Sprint. Sprint needs some people.
No. You heard Donald Trump say it right there. Sprint, because of hope, what he called hope, Sprint has decided to stay here. Go ahead, Ed. Your thoughts on all these people, these corporations deciding to keep American jobs in America?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm just exhausted from winning. I mean, it's too much winning. I just can't believe it. I mean, look, I think what Adam is saying, actually, what he said in making his announcement, economics is psychology. People have to believe that things are getting better. And what Trump has been a master at is giving people a vision and heading towards it. And I think it's really actually very exciting. I think people in this holiday season now are looking up and going, wow, there's some really good things happening. And I'm glad that Obama and him buried the hatchet. But I think this is very good news. I think it's going to keep going, and I think there's more to come.
So, Adam, how do you push back, Adam, on these companies that are saying IBM said 25,000 jobs they're going to keep here. They're saying because of the business environment, business-friendly environment, lower taxes for corporations, lower regulations. These are all things that we've been lacking for the better part of 30 years. And by the way, Republican and Democrat presidents.
Yep. So I wouldn't push back on the companies. It's good if we have jobs in this country. And again, we are proud to create jobs in 2017. It's not because we feel positive about things, trust me.
So, but you're going to tell me if you take a 35% corporate tax rate, bring it down to 15%, and promise to make business a more friendly business environment, you're not going to at least attribute some of these jobs to that?
Here's what I predict. I predict that we will see a pattern of things that look like job growth actually being massive corporate giveaways at the expense of workers. And Carrier's a perfect example. 700 jobs. $700,000 a year, I guarantee you those are not $100,000 a year jobs. That means the government is giving massive tax breaks.
I'll let Ed take this. Ed, when you keep more of your own money, is that a giveaway? You explain that to our Democrat friends.
Yeah, look, Eric, here, economics is very simple. It's leadership in economics. It's optimism and certainty. What the people and businesses are looking at is the Republican House and Senate and a president that are going to, as you said, give certainty. You're going to have less regulations, and then optimism. Leadership is optimism. President Obama actually showed this. He talked about hope and change, then he got in office and did none of it. But I mean, Adam is just plain wrong. The fact is this: jobs are being created because they're excited.
If I give you $100,000 to create a 60,000 job, I get that you
stop.
But that's not job creation.
My friend, no spin zone here. When you save on your own taxes, that is not giving anyone any money. You're allowed to keep your own money. You're allowed to use that money to hire people.
No, that was Mike Pence saying, hey, taxpayers, I'm going to give your money to this giant corporation that will create less jobs than we're getting from them. It would have been cheaper for the state of Indiana to create jobs. That is accurate. 700 jobs.
That is Carrier being allowed to keep a more of their own income.
0%? Should GE pay zero taxes?
Guess what? If they did, then we would be fully employed. That's
and listen, listen, guys, listen. One more thing, Adam. Let me say this. What being president means, what we're seeing with Trump, is leadership means putting the corporations on the hot seat. Some of these corporations don't want the heat for being anti-American or appearing to to be anti-American. By the way, that's pretty good leadership. And the left, or at least Democrats, used to like when people fought for American jobs. And look, that's what Trump's doing. There are plenty of corporations that don't like Trump saying no more open borders, no more trade deals that advantage multinationals.
Right.
That's what he's doing.
I want to jump in because I only have about 2 minutes. I want to get to this, and I think this is very, very relevant. What Donald Trump loves to make deals, and we know he loves to make deals. So he makes these deals on jobs staying in America. But the one that really is sticking with me is this Boeing deal. All right. So Boeing says it's going to cost you $4 billion for 2 airplanes. Donald Trump says no way, and they say, you know what, you're right. We're going to cut you back by $1 billion. Now that's a drop in the bucket to the federal budget. A drop in the bucket. Right. But you know what he did? He gave notice to every American corporation, everyone who was selling into America. You're all on notice.
Exactly. And in the old days, the patsy was the government. They rolled over. Look, the last Obama stimulus gave money to the unions, got nothing in return. And what Trump is saying, I'm going to build bridges and roads. We're going to do it with American jobs, American businesses. It's a mindset that's different. Government's not in charge of rolling over and giving the money. The leaders are in charge of making things better for America and for American jobs. Right. It's incredibly exciting, and it's catching.
Let me see. Adam, you got to be happy. More jobs, cheaper. If you're a taxpayer, I love this.
Let me agree. I think that having corporations in the hot seat and genuinely holding them accountable is a good thing. And that's why we shouldn't be rolling back Wall Street reform. That's why we shouldn't be giving our economy over to Goldman Sachs bankers. Not, oh, come on. He's appointed multiple Wall Street bankers. You tell me that
but
Republican voters went to the voting booth in November and voted for more Wall Street bankers to be in charge of our economy? No.
Adam, you sound like you know, it's a typical Democrat. I hope this doesn't work. I hope President Trump, his initiatives aren't working. That means that's bad for the economy.
I hope he actually holds corporations accountable and sticks up for working families, but that's not what we see with a lot of his cabinet appointments.
I got to leave it right there and say thank you to both of them. Guys, I got to go. I'm sorry. Go up against a hard break. Straight ahead, tensions escalate between the Obama administration and Israel after a speech by Secretary of State John Kerry. We'll have details, and Governor Mike Huckabee will weigh in on the subject when we come right back. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, the frayed relationship between the Obama administration and one of the United States' closest allies, Israel. Less than a week after the U.S. abstained from voting on a resolution to condemn Israel for building settlements in disputed areas, Secretary of State John Kerry today defended the action and argued that a two-state solution is the only path to peace in the Middle East.
We reject the criticism that this vote abandons Israel. On the contrary, it is not this resolution that is isolating Israel. It is the permanent policy of settlement construction that risks making peace impossible. In virtually every country in the world other than Israel.
Almost immediately after Kerry's speech, the Prime Minister of Israel slammed it as anti-Israel.
Now I must express my deep disappointment with the speech today of John Kerry. A speech that was almost as unbalanced as the anti-Israel resolution passed at the UN last week. In a speech ostensibly about peace between Israelis and Palestinians, Secretary Kerry paid lip service to the unremitting campaign of terrorism that has been waged by the Palestinians against the Jewish state for nearly a century. What he did was to spend most of his speech blaming Israel for the lack of peace by passionately condemning a policy of enabling Jews to live in their historic homeland and in their eternal capital, Jerusalem.
Joining us now from Little Rock, Arkansas, former Republican presidential candidate, Governor Mike Huckabee. Huck, it feels like this is one last shot, Obama taking at Bibi Netanyahu on his way out, but it also feels like revenge to me. It feels like, you remember when Netanyahu came out in favor of Donald Trump? It feels like this is, hey, I got you now. This is my last shot at you right here.
Well, but let's be real mindful that it was Obama's people that did everything they could and spent millions of dollars trying to defeat Netanyahu and involve themselves in a foreign election when he was up for re-election. Yes, it's personal, but Eric, a lot is on the line. And when John Kerry made that ridiculous speech today, he bloviated for what seemed like an eternal amount of time. I thought, you know, that it made a Castro speech look like a tweet in comparison. But the sad thing is he kept talking about the two-state solution and how Israel needed to give up something. I don't think a lot of people fully understand the complexity of this. I'm going to just quickly show you this little map. All that green, those are Arab Muslim countries. You can't even see it, but there's a tiny little red dot right there. That's Israel. Now, Israel has 1/640th of the landmass of all those Muslim countries. In John Kerry's fantasy, Israel is supposed to give up land and give it to people who could get it from those who have 640 times the amount of land that Israel has.
Yeah, and this
Explain why that makes
Mike,
sense.
this is important, Governor. I'm sorry. This is important because, you know, in a negotiation, the Palestinians are trying to negotiate with the Israelis. The UN, with the basically the backing of the United States, says, look what we have here. We have a resolution sanctioning Israel. It gives the Palestinians currency to negotiate, does it not?
It not only gives them currency, it gives them validity on the terrorism that they have sponsored and celebrated. They pay people a monthly salary if they kill a Jew. They name streets after people who kill Jews. They do not include on their maps Israel, any form of Israel, because they don't believe it should exist. Israel has offered, back in 1995, Ehud Barak offered basically 95% of the Israeli land to get peace with Arafat. Arafat turned it down. Look, the Palestinians don't want peace. They want to destroy Israel. Golda Meir said it best back in 1972. There will be peace in the Middle East when Palestinian mothers love their own children more than they hate Jewish children. Eric, this is not going to be resolved. There is no such thing as a two-state solution if the second state is laying on top of the land that has been the land of the Jews since the time of Abraham 4,000 years ago.
Prime Minister Netanyahu today said that the Palestinian government pays anyone who murders Jews a salary. The thought of emboldening these people at the negotiating table, it just blows my mind.
Well, it should blow everybody's mind. It's one of the reasons that this resolution was so totally out of line. And for John Kerry to defend it and for him not to try to stand against it and veto it is a betrayal of our ally. Look, Israel is the only democracy between Africa and Asia. It's the only country that gives women total full rights as men have. Why doesn't John Kerry put a little pressure on the nations that subjugate women to a lack of education, won't let them drive?
Explain this.
Look at the differences
help
here.
Help me figure this out. And I have a lot of Jewish friends. The Washington Post did a piece a couple of days ago saying that somewhere around north of 70% of Jews vote Democratic. Given what you know and given what's going on right now, why would a Jew vote a Democrat if this is their policy?
Well, it's one of the great imponderables of the world. I frankly can't understand why they would, although a lot of people who are Jewish are maybe ethnically Jewish, but they're not necessarily religiously committed. They're not observant. And they are more liberal than they are Jew. I think that's unfortunate. But look, if anybody's been to Israel, and I've been, I mean, so many times I've forgotten, I'll be there all next week. Here's the one thing you can understand. The Israelis have gone out of their way over and again to try to create peace. But when people start talking the irrational, insane words of saying, well, we'll divide up Jerusalem, you can't do that, Eric. One quick thing to make clear. The Israelis protect the holy sites of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Right. Can you name me one Muslim country that welcomes Christians to build and protect churches? No. You can't, because there isn't one. And to say that the so-called Palestinians, which, by the way, they didn't exist until 1962 when Arafat coined the term, took it away from what had been, everybody who lived in that area was a Palestinian.
They took it.
And created this group of people.
They deemed it their own. Kind of like what China's doing in the South China Sea, by the way.
Exactly.
They say this is ours. Mike, before we let you go, about a minute or so, the UN, the United States funds UN extensively. The regular budget, we account for about 22%. That's about $600 million in 2016. But there's a peacekeeping budget. We've been talking about almost $2.5 billion as well. And further, of voluntary contributions, they can be $7 or $8 billion that the U.S. funds the UN initiatives. Should we cut that back?
we should eliminate it. And I'll tell you something. We ought to take that money that's going to the UN and make it available to veterans who have served under the U.S. flag and make sure they get the benefits they need. We are getting zero benefits. We're getting embarrassed by the actions of the UN. That's money that ought to be spent on American servicemen and servicewomen, and I hope Donald Trump makes it one of the first acts of his presidency.
And guess what? We have a nice piece of real estate over in the East River over there in New York City as well if we do that. Governor Mike Huckabee, thank you very much. Plenty more ahead as the Factor moves along this evening. Reaction to Governor Huckabee, plus Donald Trump praised and pounded for how he uses Twitter. We hope you stay tuned for those reports.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Trace Gallagher. More heartache today for the family of late actress Carrie Fisher. Reports from here at Los Angeles say Fisher's mom, screen legend Debbie Reynolds, has been hospitalized for what's being described as a medical emergency. The Oscar and Tony-nominated performer is 84. This comes just one day after Reynolds' daughter, Star Wars actress Carrie Fisher, died in Los Angeles, 4 days after suffering a possible heart attack. Fisher was 60 years old. 3 earthquakes shook a remote region of western Nevada today, and the leading expert says they were big enough to cause as much as $1 billion in damage if they had been centered beneath a big city. 2 of the tremors registered magnitudes of 5.7. The epicenter was just 90 miles south of Reno. No injuries or major damage reported. From Los Angeles, I'm Trace Gallagher. Now back to the O'Reilly Factor.
Continuing now with reaction to the growing tension between the Obama administration and Israel and whether or not Donald Trump's penchant for Twitter will impact U.S. foreign policy. Delaware Senator Chris Coons joins us from Wilmington. Senator Coons, a Democrat, sits on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, let's begin with some of the reaction to the previous segment and John Kerry's speech today regarding Israel. Your thoughts?
Well, Eric, I generally respect how hard Secretary Kerry has worked over the last 4 years to try and pursue peace in the Middle East and in other places around the world, to try and stand up to Russian aggression in Ukraine and try and find a solution in Syria. But I really question the timing and the purpose of today's speech. I do think that Obama should have directed his ambassador to veto the resolution at the United Nations last Friday. And while I think Secretary Kerry has worked tirelessly to try and make progress in Israeli-Palestinian negotiations, the speech that he gave today really was a reflection on a peace process that came to an end 2 years ago. And I'm not sure that it made any real progress in bringing Israelis and Palestinians together.
That should be the only purpose, right? Find a solution to the problem in the region. And this feels like it's dividing the region rather than bringing them together.
I have some real concerns about that. I did hear Secretary Kerry to principally be saying that he is gravely concerned that the prospects for a two-state solution are rapidly diminishing, and that actions taken by Abbas and the Palestinian Authority and by Prime Minister Netanyahu make it harder and harder for a two-state solution to be realized. And I support that. American presidents going back decades to Ronald Reagan have supported a two-state solution, and since Oslo, it's been our view as a nation that we would block any efforts by the Palestinians at the United Nations to seek recognition and instead push both parties to negotiate directly the sorts of complex and difficult final status issues that Secretary spoke about today. Secretary Kerry spoke about today.
Donald Trump tweeted, he said, he basically referencing this whole issue with the resolution and the U.S. absolving choosing not to veto the resolution. He said, don't worry, January 20th is coming soon. Your thoughts on Donald Trump undoing everything President Obama and John Kerry are doing right now?
Well, I think part of why Donald Trump won the election is millions of Americans liked his freewheeling, unscripted, throw away the playbook style. And I recognize that his undisciplined 3 a.m. tweets on all sorts of topics shakes things up and makes him a different sort of leader. But as we get closer to Inauguration Day, I think we're running into some real problems. We only have one president at a time, and I would hope that Donald Trump in the remaining 3 weeks of the Obama presidency would focus on his transition and not insert himself in so many challenges around the world. On his first day as president, he's going to get handed a whole lot of challenges he's got to confront, from North Korea's nuclear program to China's aggression in the South China Sea to Russia's aggression in Ukraine and in Syria. Why he needs to stir the pot on things like Taiwan,
well, maybe
nuclear arms race,
maybe because
and this issue is beyond me.
There are a lot of people, a lot of voters who voted President like Donald Trump into office who disagree with a lot of things they're hearing on Iran, on the UN sanctioning of Israel, on sanctioning Russia, in fact, with 23 days left before the end of the presidency. So Donald Trump, my guess is that he's saying, hey, don't worry, relax, we can undo a lot of these initiatives.
And it's clear that he does intend to undo much of Obama's legacy, and that's created some tension between them that's erupted in recent tweets back and forth. My larger point, Eric, is that I question how Donald Trump's going to conduct himself as president. Is he going to be shooting out 3 a.m. tweets?
What's wrong with the tweets?
His press conference.
Senator, what's wrong with the tweets? What's wrong with the tweets? I personally like the fact that the idea that I can get a succinct thought in a couple of lines, 140 characters, and find out where the man stands on issues.
Well, I know a lot of Americans like that sort of bluntness and directness. Let's take a very recent example. He raised the question of whether we shouldn't strengthen and expand our nuclear arsenal and potentially renew the arms race, the nuclear arms race with Russia. He sent that out in a tweet. Then his spokesperson sort of walked it back and said that's not exactly what he said. And then he reasserted it later the same day. And then he got a response from Putin and a response from the Chinese. He's going to be handed so many crises on his first day as president that I don't know why he needs to, in my view, send off unguided tweets that then change the whole
Senator,
focus of our news for an entire day.
You don't want to see him tweeting from the POTUS account, Twitter account?
Well, President Obama tweets regularly. I think it's fine for a president to tweet. My concern is that he's doing it directly, personally, without consulting the leaders of the Defense Department, State Department, the intelligence community. And my hunch is it's going to make it hard for his administration to have a disciplined focus on confronting the very real security challenges we all face.
Unorthodox for sure. We're going to leave it right there. Senator Coons, thank you very much. Directly Ed, a fresh young voice in the conservative universe, goes face-to-face with Bill O'Reilly. Tomi Lahren in the No Spin Zone next. With us, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly, and in the Factor Flashback segment tonight, one of the country's newest conservative voices is really beginning to make her mark. Her name is Tomi Lahren. She's 24 years old. She works at The Blaze, and she recently entered the No Spin Zone with Bill.
So first of all, how did you hook up with Glenn Beck's The Blaze?
Well, Bill, I went viral a while back, and I think it caught the attention of Mr. Glenn Beck and The Blaze, and we got a great network here, got a lot of diverse voices, as you well know, and he saw me and he thought I had a little bit of potential and a little bit of fire, so here I am.
All right, so you were at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, right? And,
yes, sir.
And while you were there, you were doing political commentary on the internet?
I was doing a roundtable show for UNLV TV called The Scramble, and I hosted it and produced that as well. So I started at a very young age. I got my first talk show when I was 21 years old. That was out of San Diego, another independent network called One American News. I wanted an internship after The Blaze denied my internship, actually, Bill. And then here, about a year and a half later, I ended up right here at The Blaze, and now they have to pay me.
It's all internet driven. When I was coming up and I was your age, I was at Boston University, and then I went to Scranton, Pennsylvania, worked at a regular television station, and then moved up to Dallas and to Denver and back to New York. You went immediately to the net, did commentary. You're not a reporter. You're a commentator, correct? Conservative commentator.
Right, and I've used the internet to my advantage because I feel that you can reach out directly to your viewers there. You know, the mainstream media doesn't necessarily foster conservative voices and give it a platform like it deserves outside of Fox News and The Blaze. So sometimes you got to go directly online, and that's what I've been able to do. And, you know, they love me or they hate me, they're watching me.
Now, how did you become a conservative? You're from South Dakota. That's a conservative state. Were you raised in a family of conservatives?
A family of conservatives, but more so than that, just a family of hardworking Americans. I grew up knowing that if I wanted to achieve something in life, I was going to have to do it myself. I was going to have to pull myself up by my bootstraps and go get it. And that, to me, lends itself to the conservative worldview and school of thought. So it's more hardworking than just growing up in a red state.
How old were you when you started to formulate a political opinion?
I don't know. When did I start talking? I guess that would be the answer.
You were always political. Your parents political people, always in that milieu.
My parents are conservatives, but not necessarily political. I like the art of debate. I like the art of conversation, and I also like to pick apart the mainstream media because I think that in large part they cater to the coasts, and there's a large section of middle America that is ignored. And we have viewpoints and opinions and voices as well, as evidenced by this presidential election, and they're just starting to hear the silent majority get a little louder.
Why do you think so many people your age are on the left?
Well, first of all, they go to liberal institutions, as we've seen time and time again. That's where the indoctrination begins. It really doesn't matter what you experienced in childhood, whether your parents are liberal or conservative. You go to a public university and you're going to be indoctrinated one way or the other. I went to UNLV. I witnessed that. I experienced that. So a lot of people, they take that narrative that the left feeds us as well, that conservatives and Republicans are bigoted, they're cold-hearted, they're racist, and so they want nothing to do with this party or this worldview. But that's because the liberals have controlled the narrative.
All right, so you believe that the younger generation, when they get to college, are kind of brainwashed. I don't know why they would accept that, though. Look, when I went to college, it was the Vietnam era. There were a lot of lefties there. They were trying to brainwash me. We just say, hey, look, at least I did. I'm going to think for myself. Finally, you go on with this guy, Trevor Noah. This is The Daily Show. He took over for Jon Stewart. I was, a guest on Stewart's program on a number of occasions. You know that Noah is going to try to mock you, and his audience is there to support him. Does that bother you at all?
No, because someone has to have the guts to do it. I knew walking in that I was going to be walking into a crowd of people that were going to boo me and
jeer me.
Yeah,
I didn't think you came off bad. I thought you made your points fairly articulately.
I've never looked down on someone because of their skin color. To me, true diversity is diversity of thought, not diversity of color. I don't see color. I go after Hillary Clinton and she's white as they come.
You don't see color. So what do you do at a traffic lights?
But does it bother you personally that he's not going to give you a fair shake?
No, not at all, because you can't expect them to play fair. You can just get a little bit louder and have your voice be heard.
Why can't you expect them to play fair?
Well, I don't expect any liberal show or comedy show or anything from the mainstream media to be fair. I've already accepted that, as I'm sure you know as well. They're not going to be fair. They're going to label you to high heaven. But
I expect them
keep going.
To be fair. I know they're not, but it is. Well, look, you did a nice job, and you're an interesting person, and we appreciate you coming on tonight very much as well.
Thanks so much, Bill.
And Bill would also like to thank you for making his powerhouse history book, Killing the Rising Sun, the biggest selling adult book of the year. Also, Bill's kids book, Give Please a Chance, is #1 in its category. And if you go to BillO'Reilly.com and become a premium member, you can get any one of Bill's books absolutely free. And my book, Wake Up America, is a great read as we wrap 2016. Just ask President-elect Donald Trump. He wrote a nice quote for the back cover, as did Mr. Bill O'Reilly as well. Still to come, property crime up, quality of life down, San Francisco showing signs of urban decay, are liberal policies turning the city by the bay into a dangerous and disturbing place? We'll debate it in a moment.